Vil is a failing student at a prestigious magic academy, but since he lacks any form of magic, he makes up for it by using a sword to strike down his enemies. One day in class, Professor Edward is giving a lesson on how people can produce fire with the aid of catalysts and some magic. But of all the students in class he could choose from, he decides to call on Vil to demonstrate the experiment, knowing he is unable to use magic. He does this because he is a high-level hater, but Vil has no choice but to obey his order, so he walks up to the front of the class and begins trying to make the spell work, but predictably, nothing happens, so the whole class wastes no time in mocking him for his repeated failures. Edward tells them all to calm down. That's just because he wants to personally roast Vil for being incapable of such a rudimentary spell. Vil excels at magical theory, but he has no magical talent whatsoever, so Edward despises him for thinking he can attend magic school without any magic. One student in his class casts the fire spell from his seat to ignite the catalyst in front of Will, and while Edward isn't concerned for Will's safety at all, it would still be bad for his record if his student burnt to death, so he asks Cheyenne to refrain from doing reckless things like that in the future. Cheyenne apologizes and says he was just trying to help a little since Vil obviously isn't going to be able to do the demonstration. But with that said, Edward concludes the experiment and begins a speech about how magic is supreme in this world, so people who have no talent for it have no right to exist in this magic academy. And all this is said while making direct eye contact with Will. After class, Vil feels exhausted from all the hate he was getting, but people love hating on him, so Cheyenne follows him out of class to continue messing with Will. Luckily, there are still some people who are on Vil's side as Colette comes running to his defense. Cheyenne asks why Colette is defending Vil when she's an honors student and Vil is half a point away from dropping out of school, but she says that doesn't matter since Vil is the nicest person she has ever met and he works much harder than any of them ever have. Cheyenne is stunned for a moment, but then he begins laughing since no matter how kind or hardworking Vil is, it won't change the fact that he can't use magic, and Vil is certainly never going to become Magia Vendor without magic. Cheyenne and his friends leave Vil alone for now after that, so while walking together, Colette tells Vil not to be bothered by what Cheyenne and Professor Edward were saying since they just did it to humiliate him, but Vil says it's fine since he really isn't able to use magic, and besides, he considers himself lucky since their hating made a cute girl like Colette want to hang out with him. Colette gets embarrassed when he says this, so she tells Vil that flattery isn't going to make her want to go out with him, but Vil says he was just stating a fact since he thinks Colette is really cute. This gets Colette even more embarrassed, and she nearly falls for Vil on the spot, so she pushes him away for a bit so she can think clearly and remain calm. She is technically a noble, so she can't let herself fall in love so easily. After regaining her composure, she looks over to Will, but he is busy looking at the sky since it is especially beautiful today. Long ago, the people of this world lived in a constant shroud of darkness, in fear of the celestial host who ruled over them. However, that all changed when the Shadow Wizard Money Gang joined forces to oppose the Celestial and bring the light of the sky to everyone. These wizards came to be known as the Magia Vendor, and they are regarded as the epitome of magic, so no mages alive to date have ever been able to live up to the title. Colette wonders if the Ice Maiden, Albus Vina, is watching over them right now, and Vil says he is sure she is, because he knows for a fact that she is looking at them right now from her window at the top of the world. Back when Vil was younger, he had a childhood friend called Elfaria, and she would tell him all about the sun and moon she read about in her books. She was especially excited to see the sunset since it is supposedly really pretty, so she hoped they could become Magia Vanders together someday and see the sun together. Vil promised to become a Magia Vander with her, but while it may have just been a promise between children, Elfaria actually worked hard to make it happen, and soon enough, she had climbed to the top of the tower through all her hard work. In contrast, Vil had no talent at all to keep his promise, yet he is still trying his best to make it up the tower, even if it is just a delusional dream. However, even with his rock-solid resolve, it doesn't stop him from crumbling like a cookie when he gets scolded. Vil asks Professor Werkner to calm down a bit, but Werkner is rightfully angry since Vil went into the dungeon again despite knowing how dangerous it was. And all the way down to the 7th floor, too. He is worried Vil will end up getting himself killed at this rate, so Vil begs him for forgiveness, but he also asks if he can get his extra credit now. Werkner is still mad at him for going into the dungeon alone, but Vil was able to return with proof that he killed an evil guard, so he is awarded with 2 points of extra credit. Vil celebrates with his pet while Werkner gets the paperwork ready, but as he does so, he asks Vil if he still hasn't given up on becoming a Magia Vander. In order to become one, Vil would first need to advance to a higher institute, and to do that, he would need a total of 7,200 credits. Normally, students would accumulate these credits in subjects like writing, praxis, and spell work, but since Vil can't use magic, he will never earn any credits from spell work. Vil is already aware of this, which is why he wanted to make up for it by doing extra work in praxis, but Worker has already explained to him that it is practically impossible to earn enough credits to pass through praxis alone. Vil realizes his chances are slim, but he still wants to hold on to hope that he can fulfill his promise of becoming a Mangiavander. In any case, Worker tells Vil that Mangiavander is a long way off and may not even graduate if he doesn't start earning more credits. Worker heard that Vil failed to earn any credits during his last exam, so unless he wants to flunk, he has to earn an additional 4 credits by the end of the week. Vil is shocked because that means he only has 2 days left before the deadline. So with no other options left, he begins searching his notes in hopes of finding a monster he can kill that is worth 4 credits. He is really desperate to find something, so while Workner doesn't want to encourage Vil to go into the dungeon, he tells him about a Baskerville monster on the 6th floor of the dungeon, and Vil hasn't submitted that one yet, so he could get the required credits from killing it. Vil runs up to Worker to hug him as thanks for all the help he has offered him, but Worker tells him not to cling so tightly because it could put his job on the line. Unfortunately, Cheyenne happened to be outside Worker's office during the whole conversation, so he knows that Vil is planning to go into the dungeon to slay a Baskerville, and as a true hater, he plans to head down there to kill it first, so Vil won't be able to get enough credits to remain in the school. A while later, Vil arrives on the 6th floor of the dungeon, and he is in a pretty good mood since he's fought at Baskerville before, so it should be an easy win for him. His pet doesn't think it's a good idea for Vil to go into this with so much confidence, but Vil says there's nothing for him to worry about since as long as he is careful about the Baskerville's flame breath, he won't get burnt to a crisp like last time. But in order to find the Baskerville, he is depending on Kiki to sniff it out. Meanwhile, Cheyenne and his friends are on their hating-ass mission to ensure that Vil drops out of the academy. His friends are equally hating on Vil, so they plan to kill the Baskerville first, and after that, they'll beat up Vil to send a message. They are all on board with the plan, but one of his friends asks if it is really safe for them to be this deep in the dungeon when it's only 3 of them here, but Cheyenne takes offense to the question, saying he is more than enough to keep all of them safe. The others let it go since they don't want to make Shan mad, so Cheyenne keeps walking while continuing to internally hate on Vil. In Cheyenne's opinion, someone who isn't able to use magic shouldn't even dare to speak of the Mangiavanders, so the very sight of Vil offends him. Once they've gotten deep into the dungeon, Cheyenne turns around to brief his friends on what they need to do. But a second later, one of his friends gets punched so hard that he slams into a wall, and there's no way that dude survived this. Cheyenne remains calm as he faces the monster, but the other guy starts freaking the hell out. Vil hears the shrieks of the guy, and he instantly realizes that someone must be in trouble, so he rushes over to help. He can't believe there are other people this deep in the dungeon, but from the sound he just heard, they can't be too far away. As Vil arrives at the sight of all the screaming, he hides behind a wall and spots someone desperately shooting fireballs at the monster while pissing their pants, but none of his attacks are having any effect. That monster is an evil sentinel, and from what Vil knows, is worth 10 points. Vil has never seen one in person before because the sentinel's habitat should be deeper down in the dungeon, so it makes no sense why it would come up to the 6th floor. More importantly, the person it is attacking is Cheyenne, and none of his spells are having any effect on the sentinel, so he doesn't stand a chance. The first thought that comes to Vil's mind is to go save Cheyenne, but then he takes a moment to think and comes to the conclusion, nah, f*** him. He's been hating on him since day one, so why should Vil feel any obligation to save him now since no one would know if he just left him to die? He's about to close his eyes and pretend he was never here, but then he has a flashback to a time with Elfaria when she told him that she liked how kind and brave Vil was, which is why she gave him a pair of goggles as a gift. Vil still had that same pair of goggles to this day, and if he wants to continue being the same person Elfaria has always liked, he has to put his personal grudges aside and save Cheyenne, even if he is a bitch. As the Sentinel is about to kill Cheyenne, Vil jumps in and blocks the strike with his sword. At the same time, back in the academy, Professor Edward comes running into Worker's office to tell him that Cheyenne and his friends have all gone into the dungeon together without permission. He wants Worker to use his familiar to track them down before they get themselves killed, so Worker grabs his bird and asks what floor Cheyenne went to. Edward answers that they should be on the 6th floor, and as soon as Worker hears that, he is relieved since that means Vil is with them, and as long as he is there, he can handle any monster that attacks. He uses his crystal ball to show Edward what Vil is doing right now, and he is going toe-to-toe with the Sentinel, and he is absolutely blitzing it. In the blink of an eye, Vil has already chopped off one of the Sentinel's fingers, and when the Sentinel tries to counterattack, he blocks the strike mid-air and backs up to create some space. Vil then dashes in once more, and the Sentinel can't keep up with him at all. So before it even realizes what's going on, Vil has already gotten on top of it and stabbed into its shoulder. Cheyenne can't believe what he's seeing since he never thought Vil would be this so strong. Even Edward is left in shock, so Worker explains to him that Vil is an amazing anomaly. He possesses superhuman strength that a mage could never hope to achieve. He has a body that's more durable than a Nokia phone, and unbelievably accurate observational skills that allow him to grasp an enemy's strategy and form countermeasures for it after being attacked once. So as the Sentinel tries to slash Vil again, he is able to perfectly predict the attack and dodge, while also slicing off the Sentinel's arm in the process. Vil may not be able to use magic, however. He is more than capable of making up for it with his sword. As the Sentinel writhes in pain, Vil proceeds to grab the Sentinel's sword with one hand and prepares to finish off once and for all. The Sentinel fires off a plasma blast as its last-ditch effort, but a single swing from Vil's sword is far more powerful, so Vil slices the Sentinel in half, claiming his victory. Once it's all over, Vil walks over to Cyan to ask if he is okay, and Cyan still has a grudge against Vil, but Vil just saved his life, so he bites his tongue. However, even after witnessing that whole fight and how capable Vil is, it doesn't stop Edward from hating one harder since he won't stand for magicless being stronger than students with magic. Edwards leaves Worker's office in a rage, and while Worker is proud of Vil for saving Cheyenne, he is still mad at him for putting himself in danger. However, once again, he managed to defeat the monster, so Worker awards Vil with 10 points for killing the Sentinel. 5 years ago, Vil was the laughingstock of the whole school due to his lack of magic, and apparently the only reason he was allowed to enroll here in the first place was because he was friends with Elfaria. But since she had already become a Magiavander at the time, there was no reason for the school to pretend to be nice to him anymore. Vil has had to endure all the ridicule this entire time, but it hasn't stopped him from working hard to graduate regardless. Worker accompanied Vil to be evaluated by the headmistress, and she obviously had her doubts about whether Vil was cut out for this school or not. But once she hands him a sword and begins the test, Vil is able to counter each and every one of her fire spells within a fraction of a second. She is so impressed that she says Vil is allowed to stay at the school, and Workner is a bit surprised since he didn't think it would be this easy to convince her. It is true that Vil doesn't have any magic, but more importantly, she thinks it'll be fun to have someone like Vil around. Vil asks the headmistress if he can be by Elfie's side again if he becomes strong enough, and she tells him that he will have to work really hard and remain unfazed by the challenges along the way, but even then, there's no guarantee. But as Vil leaves, she remarks that it'll be fun to see what Vil can accomplish. Back to the present, Vil is currently in Worker's class as he teaches everyone about the Tower of Magic. Climbing the tower means advancing to the upper institute to the topmost floor where you will become a Magiavander. As of now, there are currently 2 methods to becoming a Magiavander, and that's either to create a new type of magic or to earn over 7,000 credits in this school, but it is pretty rare to invent new magic, so students usually focus on earning credits. However, since this is a remedial class, everyone in here is in danger of flunking out of school, especially Vil. After the classes are over, Colette meets up with Vil and asks how Vil is feeling since Worker's remedial classes are notoriously strict. Vil agrees that Worker is a strict teacher, but to be honest, he is glad Worker is kind enough to offer remedial classes in the first place since most professors wouldn't bother to do so. As they are turning a corner, they notice a commotion going on, so they listen in and hear Xian's friends glazing him for defeating the evil Sentinel. They won't question how he survived, but somehow by the time he woke up, the only thing Mars saw was Xian and a defeated evil Sentinel, meaning Xian had to have defeated it. Everyone believes Xian is amazing for being able to kill a monster as powerful as an evil Sentinel, but deep down, Xian knows he's a fraud since the one who actually defeated it was Vil. Just then, he notices Vil walking by and he takes that as a personal insult, so he goes to Vil and starts picking a fight with him again. However, it's a lot harder for him to see Vil as inferior when he knows Vil could easily one-shot him right now. He's just choosing not to. He lets go of Vil's jacket and begins walking away without saying a word. So once Xian is gone, Colette asks Vil if something happened between the two of them, and something definitely happened. At the same, Edward has just barged into Headmistress Cauldron's office and is demanding that Vil be expelled immediately. Cauldron asks why Edward suddenly wants to expel Vil out of the blue. He's already in his 6th and final year at the academy, so they can't just expel him without a reason. Edward tries to argue that Vil can't be allowed to stay at this school since he is a warrior, not a mage, and he won't stand for someone who can't use magic trying to surpass it. Cauldron pulls out Vil's records and points out that Vil has outstanding scores in his writing, and his magic reports are incredibly insightful, so aside from the fact that he can't use magic, he is the definition of a perfect student. If his dream were to become a Magiavander, then he could easily excel at any other profession he chose, and it is the Academy's duty to produce people of learning for the fated day. However, Edward states that the fact Vil wants to become a Magiavander is the problem, and Cauldron can see Edward's points, so she proposes a solution. She tells Edward to go and personally test Vil, and if Vil cannot pass Edward's test, then he's free to expel him if he wants. Edward asks if Cauldron is sure she wants to leave Vil's test up to his #1 hater, and Cauldron says she's fine with it since it won't make a difference. If anything, she thinks it will be more entertaining to have the one known as the Dark Viper Mage test Vil. Back on Vil's end, he is getting ready for his next class and asks Colette to help him open his locker for him. She happily does so, and he apologizes for having her do this for him all the time since he can't use magic. She says she doesn't mind, but then she notices Vil's sword in his locker and asks him if he's still training with it. Vil says he is, but he couldn't get permission to use it while he's in school, and back in his dorm, his roommate wouldn't let him do anything dangerous. He and Colette later head to the library to study together, and Vil is taking it very seriously despite having already learned this topic before. Colette tells him to take it easy since he's already at the top of the class in writing, but Vil says he needs to keep studying his hardest since he can't afford to lose a single credit. And besides, he enjoys learning history from the perspectives of the other races, especially since he can relate to the dwarves. They marched to war against powerful mages, but they never gave up in spite of the challenge. Just then, Colette notices that Vil has a white strand of hair on his head, and she says it's probably because he is overworking himself. She offers to pluck it out for Vil, and even though Vil says she doesn't need to, she still really wants to do it. However, in the middle of their flirting, Edward shows up behind Vil and tells him to come to the spell hall alone because there is something he needs to do. A little while later, Vil arrives at the spell hall, and Edward says that he will be offering Vil a special remedial class, so he should be grateful for it. Will can't believe Edward would offer him a remedial class, but that still shows that he has no good intentions. He wants to see what Vil can really do, so he fires a warning shot to let Vil know that this is serious and tells him that if he's able to successfully land a blow, then Edward will award him 5 spell work credits. Otherwise, if he fails, he will immediately be expelled. He also tells Vil that he is not allowed to refuse this test either, so he begins casting a spell to take Vil out. Meanwhile, Worker has just been summoned to Cauldron's office, and she apologizes for calling him here on such short notice, but she thought Worker should be informed of what Edward is doing. She casts a spell to show him the test Edward is giving Vil, and she forbids Worker from interfering for any reason. She believes it's only fair that Edward gets to have his request granted since Worker got the same when he asked to watch over Vil. Still, Worker thinks it is too cruel to let Edward of all people be the one to test Vil because he is a man who nearly became a Magiavander. He may have failed, but he still possesses power that is equivalent to one, so Vil is in serious danger right now. So far, Vil has been able to avoid getting hit by Edward's spells, but Edward has only been using low-level black magic so far, so Vil can't believe how much power Edward is producing. Vil has to fight back somehow, so he tries to run up behind Edward and land a kick, but Edward is easily able to block it with a shield spell. The shield is too strong for Vil to break it unarmed, and Edward calls him hopeless for thinking he could get through a magic shield with a kick. Edward then blasts him away, and Vil is starting to worry that there may be no way for him to win, as Edward is simply too strong for him to beat as he is now. Edward tells Vil that he will limit himself to 2 spells, one to attack with fire, and one to defend himself from Vil's crude attacks. However, even if it is only one attack spell, one who has mastered that one spell can outclass someone who has learned 1,000. Edward is simultaneously casting his fire spell, and Vil knows it will be bad news for him if he gets hit with that, so he starts running away, but Edward is still able to blast him regardless, and you can tell Edward is enjoying this because he looks like he is conducting a symphony of Vil's screams. Vil eventually falls to the ground, and he realizes there's no way for him to beat Edward like this, but if he had his sword, he could at least hold his ground against Edward. Outside the spell hall, Colette had been putting her things away in her locker, and she was really worried about Vil since Edward asking Vil to come alone for remedial classes couldn't have been a good sign. All of a sudden, Kiki came running up into the room covered in Vil's blood, and she was trying to get to Vil's sword in his locker. So Colette realizes that something bad really happened to Vil and opens his locker, so they can go give him his sword. As Vil is lying on the ground, Edward is slowly walking towards him while saying that Vil could never hope to become a Mangiavander if he can't surpass him here. Magic has always reigned supreme even in the past when dwarves went to war with the mages against an army of 10,000 dwarves. All it took was one mage to annihilate them all. The sword is never going to compare to the wand, but even if the odds are insurmountable, Vil still wants to become a Mangiavander. He will do whatever it takes to achieve it. Edward can't understand why Vil would go to such lengths to become one, so he asks if Vil has some sort of noble goal that he wants to accomplish. So Vil tells him that he wants to be by the side of the girl he loves, but Edward thinks that's a stupid reason. It may seem ridiculous to Edward, but Vil made a promise to Elfie, and no matter what it takes, he wants to be able to watch the sunset with her. Just then, Colette arrives at the spell hall and throws Vil's sword to him, and now that he is finally armed, Vil is able to counter Edward's fire spell. Edward is shocked that Vil was able to cut through the spell, but he realizes it's because Vil's sword is special. Even so, he still intends to prove that Vil is no match for a mage. Vil is terrified of Edward's flames, and if possible, he would have run away from this fight a long time ago. But facing Edward is the only way for Vil to move forward, so he charges at Edward while dodging all his attacks, and since he is finally close enough, he slices through Edward's barrier and successfully scratches Edward's cheek. Edward is forced to admit that Vil has passed the test, so he awards him his 5 credits and walks away. Vil collapses to the ground out of exhaustion, and Colette runs up to congratulate him on his victory, but he is totally passed out. Cauldron praises Vil's performance, and Worker says his strategy of diving into the attack to close the distance and attack from a blind spot was brilliant. And what's even more impressive is that his sword strike was powerful enough to surpass Edward's shield, so Vil may have what it takes to become a Mangiavander after all. In a flashback, we see the time Elfie gifted Vil his pair of goggles, and immediately after doing so, she had to say goodbye since she was going to the top of the tower. However, as she was walking away, Vil called out to Elfie and swore to her that he would find a way to climb the tower as well so they can be together. Even if the odds are against him and he can't use magic, Vil swears that he will keep his promise and see the sunset with her someday. Elfie was moved by Vil's speech, so she turned around with tears in her eyes and said she would wait for him as long as it takes, and as Elfie finally left, Vil vowed that this would be the last time he ever cries or acts pathetic again. Back to the present, Vil is currently busy with his paper deliveries since he's got to work a lot of jobs to pay for his tuition. While on his usual route, he happens to run into Donan, and he greets him warmly, wishing Vil luck on his delivery route. He also says he will be visiting the tavern later today, so Vil tells him he will be waiting for him. As Vil runs off to finish off his deliveries, he ends up tripping on some steps and spilling the newspapers all over the place. But that is not a problem, since with his speed, he's easily able to pick all the papers out of the air and avoid falling over. He happened to miss on newspaper, so he walks over to pick it up, but as he does so, he notices an article about Elfie and how she's created yet another type of original magic. She's the first person to create 12 different original magic spells, and Vil is happy to see that she's still working hard up there, so he's going to work hard here as well. He's about to get moving again, but then he notices that there's another section in the article that says Elfie has personally passed a request to the academy, and he totally freaks out over it. He immediately runs over to his dorm room and begins asking his roommate Rusty if he can help him make a magic item on short notice. Rusty asks what the huge rush is, so Vil tells him about the request Elfie put in, and he wants to be the one to handle it. He doesn't have any lessons today, so he's free to prioritize the request and starts getting dressed. The job is to gather Frostwalker ice cores since she apparently needs a lot of magic catalysts, and all participating students are going to be compensated accordingly, so Vil just needs Rossi's magic items to help him. Rossi jokes that Vil is really straightforward with his request, but he has no reason to refuse, so he hands Vil his new and improved magic items, which Vil is very thankful for. Down on the 4th floor of the dungeon, Vil has just arrived to begin gathering ice cores, but there are already a ton of students here to do the same thing. Still, Vil expected as much since Elfie is famous, so he is going to give it his all. However, just as he is about to start, a huge explosion rings out in the cave, and it looks like it was caused by Xian, who just blew up a bunch of Frostwalkers. His friends praise him for his display of skill, but internally Xian is agonizing over the fact that he is still nowhere near the level of strength Vil showcased that day. As Vil sees Xian, he is honestly impressed by the magic power he used, although he seems really angry about something. In any case, with all these students here, Vil will never get the chance to slay any Frostwalkers, so his only choice is to go deeper into the dungeon floor. As Vil descends, he ends up seeing a girl in danger, so he leaps into action, and moments later, all 3 monsters have been sliced in half. The girl is shocked by what she just witnessed, since this is the first time she has seen a magic student use a sword to fight. Vil asks her if she's alright, and after the initial shock has worn off, she says she's fine and introduces herself as Iris. We cut to a lecture with Workner where he is talking about the great achievement of creating new magic. It is an accomplishment so grand that it warrants unconditional advancement up to the top of the magic tower, and new magic is usually named after the person who created it or from words associated with them. For example, the dark magic spell Dax Darbicans that Edward used is named after a mage from ancient times called Fire Watchman Darbicans. So if any one of the students here manage to create new magic, they will be carving their names into history forever. A student raises her hand and asks Workner if this means Elfaria is an amazing mage, and without a doubt, Worker believes that Elfaria is unbelievably good at her magecraft. It is unheard of for a single mage to create 12 original spells by themselves, so it isn't a stretch to say that she is one of the greatest mages to ever live. After hearing about Elfaria's accomplishments, Colette has to admit that she is every bit as amazing as Vil had said she was, but her friend Rose starts teasing her for being jealous of Elfaria because she's in love with Vil. Colette gets embarrassed and yells at Rose for saying such ridiculous things, but that causes a disturbance in class. So Worker turns around and tells her to sit down and be quiet. Meanwhile, down in the dungeon, Vil and Iris are walking along a passage, and after Vil had introduced himself to her, she recalls hearing about him since she was told about an upperclassman who couldn't use magic, nicknamed the Unprecedented No Talent. Vil is shocked to hear that people actually call him that, but he also notices that Iris referred to him an upperclassman. So she explains that she is only 14, meaning she's 2 years below Vil right now. That makes her a fourth-year student, but Vil has something that he's curious about, so he asks her if she doesn't feel any disdain towards him due to his lax magic. But Iris doesn't see why she should dislike Vil for something like that, especially when he saved her a few minutes ago. Even if he can't use magic, she has a heartfelt respect for people who have their own special talents. Vil gets a bit flustered, so he changes the subject and asks Iris if she's here because of Elfie's request, and Iris confirms it, saying she wants to be of use to the Magiavander and someday she hopes to become one of the people to hold up the sky. And she isn't speaking metaphorically, by the way. In this world, people aren't able to see the real sky because their world is hidden. The tremendous energies of the Magiavander cover everything and create a false sky known as the Great Barrier, and according to the legends, when the Great Barrier falls, the world will once again be enveloped in darkness and a great calamity will begin. That's why students are motivated to fulfill the requests of the Magiavander, not just because they admire them, but also because they believe it will help support their mission to hold the sky up. Iris mentions that she has actually had the honor of meeting Elfaria in person before, and Vil is surprised, so she starts telling him how it happened. She was cornered in the dungeon one day, and as her life had begun to flash before her eyes, she saw no way out. However, before she could be devoured, a burger wall of ice encased all the monsters that were attacking her, and she turned around to find Elfaria standing there and asking if she was alright. It was an experience she will never forget, which is why she wants to do everything she can to help Elfaria. However, even though she came to get the Frostwalker cores, she hasn't been able to find a single one, and her search spell isn't picking up anything either, so she assumes the other students must have defeated them all. But Vil doesn't think that's the case. He shows Iris an ice fragment that Frostwalkers leave behind when they move, and it's normally supposed to be around a millimeter, but this one is huge. That can only mean that there must be a powerful Frostwalker nearby, probably somewhere that Iris's search spell can't detect. Iris asks Vil how he could possibly know all this when he can't use magic, so he explains that he studies magic because he thinks it is amazing, but it's not almighty. Especially not inside a place like the dungeon, so he who lacks magic has to use all his knowledge, wisdom, and experience to make up for it. Iris asks what Vil means by experience, and seeing as they are standing in a large open room, Vil's experience tells him that there is about to be a boss battle. As the Frostwalker tries to sneak attack them, Vil dashes forward to get Iris to safety, and as she finally realizes what's going on, she identifies the monster as a Frost Rex. A Frost Rex is the highest form of a Frostwalker, and it's worth 6 credits on its own, so it's basically the special boss monster of the 4th floor. The Frost Rex fires an ice laser towards them, so Vil jumps out of the way to avoid being frozen to death. He sets Iris down and asks her to stay back while he handles the Frost Rex, but Iris warns him that physical attacks won't work against the Rex, as anything it touches will instantly be frozen. For that reason, close combat has been completely ruled out as an option, and it is generally believed that the only way to deal with it is with long-range magic attacks, but Vil isn't worried as he has a plan in mind to deal with the Rex. As it begins charging up another laser blast, Vil prepares the magic item he got from Rosie and charges forward at it. He evades the ice beam and lands behind the Rex before sliding underneath. The Rex can't keep track of Vil, so it begins firing in random directions, and while it's not paying attention, Vil uses the magic item to latch onto its body before dashing around the room to entangle it. Before long, he has completely ensnared the Rex in wires, and Vil states that the main weaknesses of Frost Rex are fire magic and explosive attacks. So as the Frost Rex is about to fire another blast at him, Vil activates the magic item and causes the wire to ignite, leading all the way back to the bombs that were attacked to the hook and causing a huge explosion. The Frost Rex is reduced to a pile of rubble, so Vil retracts the tool and makes a mental note to thank Rusty for his help later. Iris is stunned at what she just saw, but then her true personality comes out, and she remarks that Vil is far stronger than the rumors had led her to believe. She wonders how she should report her findings, but while she's thinking, Vil gets her attention and tells her they've gotten a really good ice core, so they can head back now, and Iris smiles in agreement to maintain her persona and avoid suspicion. A while later, Iris heads to the Wizard Tower, and as she is walking along the halls and taking off her disguise, she goes over what she learned from following Vil. He truly can't use magic, but he compensates for it in creative ways. That, along with his insane battle sense and experience, means that while he is not qualified to be a mage, he is an incredibly talented warrior. As she reaches the end of the hallway, she walks up to a huge door and opens it to meet with the Magiavanders. She asks them for a moment of their time and apologizes if she is interrupting something important, but Carriot tells her that there's no need to apologize since they were just having a boring meeting for the sake of it, but the situation is still dire since if the sky barrier were to be breached now, the world would certainly be destroyed. The celestial host that has been watching them from beyond the sky would overwhelm them instantly with the number of mages they have now, so they need to hurry and find more promising mages to aid the fight to come on that fated day. Otherwise, the calamity in the lore will come to pass, and they can't allow that to happen. They ask Iris how her observation mission went and if she happened to find anyone useful, and she confirms that she managed to find a promising person who could be useful to their cause. The no talent who can't use magic, Vil Surfert, and she recommends that he be inducted into the tower. Carriot and Eleanor are against the idea, but Z thinks it could be fun, while Elfie chooses to reserve her opinion on the matter. Z honestly doesn't care who it is as long as they are useful, but Eleanor thinks it would be crazy to bring a magicless person here. They are about to start a fight over it, but Carriot calms them down and says they don't need to make a decision now as the Grand Magic Festival will be occurring soon, and they can just use those results to decide. The useful ones will naturally end up in the top positions, so if Vil doesn't make it, then he wasn't cut out for the tower. With that, they call the meeting to a close and all teleport themselves out, and with Elfie being the only one left, she is happy to know Vil is still trying to keep his promise, so she says she will be waiting for him as long as it takes. As part of the next test the students have to participate in, they are all set to fight against golems, and if you manage to defeat one, then you pass. Shion and Colette are up first, and then both manage to defeat their golems with ease. Meanwhile, Vil is struggling against his. Vil tries running behind the golem in order to land a clean punch, but as the students see him about to attack with his fists, they begin mocking him for not being able to use magic, and this distracts Vil long enough for the golem to backhand him across the room. The students begin to leave after being satisfied by Vil's failure to defeat his golem, but on the other end of the room there are a few students who are having no trouble with the golems at all. They are Lehana and Wignall, and they both pass without a doubt, but there's one more student who walks up and begins casting ice magic. With a wave of his wand, he sends icicle shards into all the golems, causing them all to be encased in solid blocks of ice. This is Julius, and he is one of the top 3 students of the academy, along with the other 2. Lehana commends Wignall and Julius for keeping up with her and not slacking off, but the banquet is going to be starting soon, so there was never a reason for either of them to slack off. On that note, Julius says he would like to declare a friendly war on them, and he will use his newly mastered ultimate technique to deliver their defeat when the time comes. As a token of his sincerity, he offers an ice rose to them, but neither Wignall nor Lehana seem to be amused, although Wignall does seem to be looking forward to a face-off with Julius. These 3 are pretty much celebrities within the school because they are the only students who all have earned more than 10,000 of the total 12,000 credits. Some people think of credits as a reflection of a mage's capabilities, but Vil is nowhere near that level. Right now, he doesn't even have enough credits to graduate in the first place, and this is his final year in this school. As Vil is sitting there and wondering what he's going to do, Julius and his Glazers walk up to him and begin insulting him for his lack of magic ability, and Vil just gets out of his way to avoid causing any problems. As Julius and the others leave, Vil hears them talk about the Grand Magic Festival, and he hadn't realized it was that time of year already. Later that day during lunch, Colette comes up to Vil and tells him that his only hope of becoming a Magiavander is to get scouted at the Magic Festival. Attempting to graduate based solely on his praxis and writing isn't practical, and there have been cases of students getting scouted without having the 7,000 credits needed to graduate. The Magic Festival is a huge event that takes place once every 2 years. It holds several different events and draws in high mages from the tower, who hope to scout promising talents. The festival is a place where the different magic factions fight over the right to recruit the best students, and it wouldn't be a stretch to say that admissions for the Upper Institute are decided during the festival. There are 5 factions: the Thunder faction, the Elf faction, the Fire faction, the Ice faction, and Mysterious Noah. All these factions, excluding Mysterious Noah, are led by their respective Magia Vanders, so if they scout you, it's a guaranteed promotion. Vil doesn't think it's likely that he will be chosen since he's already failing, and for him to even get noticed, he would have to have some kind of amazing magic that would put the high mages to shame. And while he's right about that, there are still other ways to get scouted. Colette has heard rumors that Watchers will come to look for talented students, but Vil thinks Watchers are just an urban legend. There's no way a magicless no talent like him would have a place in the festival, so he's just going to stay behind the scenes and help with the preparations instead. Colette thinks that Vil could change the way people look at him if he entered the festival this year and show them what he can do, but Vil still doesn't want to enter since it would end up becoming an athletics contest if he were there. He has tried entering the festival once before back in his 2nd year, and he literally got booed off stage for using physical attacks. He got bad reputation for that, and he still hasn't gotten over the humiliation of it, so he really doesn't want to enter. Students all over the school have begun practicing in earnest for the festival, and Colette reminds Vil that aside from the high mages, many scouts from the capital will be there as well, so even if Vil can't earn a place as a Magia Vander, he could still get scouted for another career. The Magic Festival is a great place to showcase your abilities, so Colette really wants Vil to show everyone how capable he is. But Vil still doesn't think it's a good idea to participate without being able to use magic. Just then, Colette notices something strange, so she goes over to one of the other lockers and tells Vil that there's something off about it. It's well hidden, but she can sense a barrier here. Vil asks if she is sure it isn't just a locking spell for the locker, but Colette can tell that the barrier is made to block sound and obstruct view. Colette could break it with her magic, but that could be troublesome, so she asks Kiki to do it instead. Once the barrier is dispelled, they find a staircase hidden behind the lockers, which leads to a secret gambling ring. A bunch of students all gather here so they can place bets on who will come out on top the Magic Festival. Colette finds it deplorable that the students would turn their locker room into an illegal gambling ring, but then Vil notices Xian standing across from them, and he's surprised to see him here since Xian doesn't seem like the kind of guy who enjoys betting. Xian gets defensive and starts yelling at Vil to mind his own business, but Colette steps in and warns Xian that if he gets into a fight with Vil for no reason, then she will make sure he regrets it. Xian calms down, so Vil asks him again what he's doing here since he doesn't seem to be participating in all the betting. Xian doesn't feel the need to answer Vil's questions, but it's totally not like he came here to see whether people were betting on him or not, and he definitely isn't upset that no one thinks he has a chance of winning even though he's the 4th best student in the school. Sure, the top 3 students may have slightly more credits than him, but Xian's credit score is in the high 9,000s, and the only reason he ranks lower than the others is because he failed a writing test once. Since then, he has been working a lot harder to make up for the lost credits and catch up, but his magic skills are still on par with Lihana and the others, so he is just as likely to win at the festival as any of them are. Although, he doesn't know why he is trying to justify himself to Vil. After that, the rest of the day goes on like normal, and once classes are over, Vil gets up to leave. Before he goes, Colette gets his attention and asks if he is free after school because she would love to hang out with him, even if it's going into the dungeon together, but unfortunately, Vil has work to do tonight, so he won't be able to spend time with her today. Later that night, Vil is at Jana's restaurant on the outskirts of the city, and he's working as a waiter there. He brings a tray of food and drinks to Donnan, and Donnan feels bad for how hard Vil has to work all the time. He delivers newspapers in the morning, has classes during the day, and then has to work here at night. It's definitely hard, but Vil has to push through it since he doesn't qualify for the school's scholarship, meaning he has to pay for everything out of pocket. Donnan mentions that he heard something about the Grand Magic Festival coming up soon, so he suggests that Vil could participate, but Vil immediately shoots down the idea because he doesn't want to get humiliated again. Jana yells for Vil to get back to work and points out that his friend is working much harder than him. We then see Rosti, who is also working as a waiter here, although he is only doing it for Vil as a favor to him since tonight is really busy and one of Jana's workers quit. And all that extra work is just going to get dumped on Vil's shoulders if she doesn't hire someone soon. After the dinner rush is over, Vil and Rosti are cleaning up the dishes, and Rosti asks Vil if he is really okay working here, because the wages he gets paid from the dwarves aren't that high. He could easily ask Workner to help him find a higher paying job, but Vil doesn't want to bother Workner too much, and besides, he likes the people here a lot, so working around them is fun for him. They are honest, caring, and shower him with warmth, so Vil respects them a lot. Things are going really well, but a few moments later is all ruined as Julius walks into the restaurant just so he can be a hater. As soon as he steps in, the first thing he does is start insulting the restaurant and the dwarves in it. Julius then notices Vil here and begins laughing to himself that a failure like Vil is only fit to be around barbarians like dwarves. This gets on Donan's nerves, but the other dwarves there hold him back because they can't afford to get into a fight with a mage. Julius begins threatening Donan not to try anything funny because he and all the other dwarves are just immigrants who fled here after the Celestials destroyed their world, and humans have been graciously allowing his kind to live here without issue, so a dwarf like him has no right to glare at Julius like that. Donan calms himself down because he knows there is nothing he can do, and everything Julius said about the dwarves being refugees is true since they fled here after their world was destroyed. But even though the same thing happened with the elves, dwarves are treated with contempt by the humans here. So if Donan were to attack Julius for what he said, all dwarves in the city would suffer consequences for it. That's just the way the world works here. But Vil can't stand for such injustice. He decides that today is going to be his last day working here. And since he is no longer employed at this establishment, Vil is free to do whatever the hell he wants without Gina having to face any consequences. And the first thing he does is go to Julius's table and tell him to take back what he just said about the dwarves. Dwarves are hard workers who made the best out of the harsh conditions they were given and thrived, so Julius has no right to call them barbarians. However, Julius couldn't care less about the dwarves or their struggles, so he kicks his plate of food at Vil, and his two groupies get up, ready to beat Vil up. However, they fail to realize that a plate of food being thrown at him counts as assault, so anything Vil does from here on out can be classified as self-defense, and Vil immediately grabs the two boys by the shirt and gives them first-hand knowledge of what the floor tastes like. Julius gets slashed in the process, and it's been a long time since he has suffered such humiliation, so he's going to make Vil pay for what he has done. The room begins to freeze over as Julius takes out his wand and begins to attack Vil. Vil jumps back to evade Julius's ice strikes, but he doesn't have his sword and is in an enclosed space, so eventually, Julius manages to trap him with ice and pin Vil to the wall. He then walks up to him and is about to freeze Vil solid, so Rosti is about ready to step in and save Vil. But before he freezes Vil, he looks into Vil's eyes, hoping to see him beg for his life, but Vil's eyes show no sign of fear, so Julius decides on a change of plans. Instead of freezing Vil here, he wants to do it at the Magic Festival, so he can thoroughly humiliate Vil in front of the whole school. Vil agrees to fight Julius in the Magic Festival, and Julius says that if he wins, he will have Vil kicked out of the school once and for all, but Vil just wants an apology from Julius to all the dwarves he disrespected when he wins. We cut to the day of the Grand Magic Festival, and it's clear that everyone is excited to see what the students can do. The Fire Faction Scout tells his people to be on the lookout for a talented student, since you can never tell who possesses the skill to become a Magiavander. The first event involves the broadcasted dragon races, and Lehana has been maintaining a strong lead over the other competitors for a while now. But that's not the only competition going on right now. As the spectators in the crowd are all eagerly watching to see the results, there are a fair number of recruiters here as well, both from the tower and outside it, and they are all interested in recruiting the best students the school has to offer. Lehana unsurprisingly wins the dragon race in record time, so the next event is going to be Crown Attack, and it looks like Xian is going to be participating. He is in a good mood since Colette personally came to ask for him to join her team. She must have finally realized how exceptional Xian is and wants to work alongside him instead of Vil, but as he opens the door to the training room, he is shocked to find Vil there as well. Colette clarifies that she was inviting him to join a team with her and Vil because Vil needs a team with a total number of credits equal to 21,000 in order to compete in the Crown Attack, and since his credits are so low, the only person she could ask to fill out the final spot was Xian. Vil apologizes for getting Xian dragged into his problems, but Xian sees no reason why he should help Vil. In the first place, why would Vil suddenly want to enter an upper-level event like Crown Attack? But while Xian is yelling at Vil locks eyes with Julius, and Xian realizes that Julius is the only one Vil is focusing on. Colette explains that something happened between Julius and Vil suddenly decided that he would participate in the Crown Attack event no matter what it takes. Xian is enraged that Vil is ignoring him because he still hasn't gotten over how inferior he felt when Vil saved him in the dungeon. As the next event is about to begin, the commentator, Mike, introduces himself, and as his co-commentator, Edward is there as well, although Mike doesn't like it since Edward is the most hated professor in the school due to how strict and scary he is. In fact, he's scared Edward might kill him before the end of the festival, but the show must go on. So Mike announces the main event of the day, the Crown Attack event. A spell is cast over the stadium into a whole battle map. There's a volcano zone, a marshland zone, a badlands zone, and a plant zone, and a wood zone. Unlike the other events, the Crown Attack is a team competition held between three-man cells. All the teams will start on the outer edge of the field and make their way here to the central stadium. At the center of the stadium, there's a giant crown, and the first team to take it will win. But of course, that is easier said than done since the entire playing field has been rigged with traps of all kinds. Going for the shortest path to the stadium is allowed, and obstructing other teams is allowed as well. So all the events, this is sure to be the most brutal battle royale. Edward adds that the event was created to be a practical demonstration of how teams would handle a dungeon raid together, but no one's focusing on team coordination. They all want to see high-level battles between the top students of the school. And if there were an illegal gambling ring in the school, which there totally isn't, Wignoll's team is the most popular of all the teams. And unsurprisingly, on the opposite end of the gambling pool, the team that has the least popularity is the one led by Vil. The students begin laughing at Vil for daring to think that he could participate in an event like the Crown Attack, but Vil isn't going to lose confidence this time. As the participants for the event are all heading to their designated start locations, Werkner is shocked when he sees that Vil intends to compete as well. He tries talking Vil out of it, but Vil's mind was already made up from the start, so nothing Werkner says can stop him. He apologizes for not listening to Werkner, but even if it makes him the laughingstock of the school, this is one competition that he wants to win by all means. Vil then walks away, and Werkner accepts that he isn't going to be able to talk Vil out of this, but he reminds Vil that he was warned about the risk involved, so if things turn out badly for him, he has no one to blame but himself. With all the students in position, the Crown Attack event can officially begin. The students rush forward, and Julius's team is the first to run into some of the traps that were laid out on the battlefield. As they approach, the cubes engage and form an army of golems which stand in Julius's way. With so many golems in one place, this would easily become an insurmountable roadblock for many students. However, Vil continues to charge forward at full speed, and he is showing no signs of slowing down. The students begin to mock him for attempting to break through the golem swarm when he can't use magic and couldn't beat a single golem during the praxis exercise. Vil continues running towards the golems, and before he attacks, he gives a signal to Colette, who then casts a spell to create a magic gauntlet for Vil, and with it, Vil is able to absolutely demolish all the golems in his path. The jaws of all the spectators hit the floor as they all witness Vil's capabilities, but Werkner already expected something like this to happen. So long as Vil attacks using a magic gauntlet, then he can do a significant amount of damage even if he doesn't have his sword, and since Colette is the one who made it, then it's technically not against the rules either. Against every prediction and all the illegal betting odds, the first one to successfully make it through the golem horde is Vil, and he's going straight for the crown now. Ever since the day Vil saved him, Xian has been reliving that moment over and over in his head. He views it as one of his worst failures, and he would have preferred to die rather than face such terrible humiliation. That's why he has been struggling so hard to improve himself and build up every ounce of strength his body can possibly generate, but even with all his hard work, Vil is still outclassing him without magic. In the Crown Attack, Vil and his team have taken a huge lead, and with the goal being to reach the stadium and seize the crown, the other competitors are going to have to pick up the pace if they don't want to be left behind. Vil makes it to the Badlands zone, and upon arrival, more cube traps activate. By this time, they begin firing rock bullets at Vil and the others. As the bullets are headed their way, Vil stops and uses his gauntlet to punch the ground to create a rock wall that blocks the bullets. He then jumps forward and asks Colette for some help again, so she casts a spell that creates a dozen swords for Vil, and he proceeds to use the swords as projectiles to destroy all the cubes in his way. Mike announces that Vil's team has made it through the Badlands with ease, and they're yet to come across a trap that poses a challenge for them with their teamwork, although Xian hasn't really done anything though. The spectators that get against Vil try to downplay his skill by saying Colette's magic is doing all the heavy lifting, and her magic definitely plays a part in it, but the efficiency of the weapons in battle all comes down to Vil's technique. The scouts are starting to take notice of Vil and his amazing skill in detecting and countering traps, and as much as he doesn't like Vil, even Edward has to acknowledge his hard work. All the time Vil has spent in the dungeons has allowed him to minimize the inefficiencies in his movements, and his superhuman reflexes allow him to capitalize on the smallest openings available. One other team is frustrated that they are losing to someone who has no magic, but their hate for Vil distracts them so much that they end up falling for a flower trap, so they get eaten alive. The other teams face similar issues with the traps laid along the path, but through all the brutal obstacles, Vil still manages to keep the lead with his team. The turn of events has caused quite the uproar at the stadium, so much so that Julius can hear it all the way over here. He asks his teammates for an update on the current situation of the event, and Julius's teammates use a detect spell to locate the rest of the competition. From what they are seeing, it looks like Vil is currently in the lead by a large margin, so if they don't do something about him soon, Julius may actually lose. However, Julius doesn't seem to be all that worried since he has a plan to handle Vil personally. Meanwhile, Vil and the others have just made it to the final area before the arena, the Enchanted Woods. As Vil runs in first, he triggers several magic circles at once, and he soon realizes that this must be a chain circle trap, but it's not going to be a problem since he already has the perfect counter for something like this. If all of them are going to fire at once, then he is just going to have to make them cancel each other out, so he begins carving away at the area around each magic circle. And by putting some spin on them, he is able to make all the spells fire at one another and explode. Mike excitedly announces that Vil has made it through the forest traps without any trouble, and he asks Edward if he has any comments to make since he was the one who set up that dark magic minefield. But Edward just clicks his tongue in annoyance that Vil managed to get past his trap so easily. Even with all the momentum Vil has built up with his massive lead as he gets closer to the stadium, the chances of him running into another team and getting attacked become rise dramatically. He'd had to take out a couple of other teams, but there's one team in particular that he is after, so Vil intends to run ahead and set up an ambush for Julius. However, as he is on his way to secure the high ground for his ambush, the tables are turned on him as Julius fires an icicle straight at him. Vil is alright since it didn't hit his body directly, but he can't understand how Julius could have possibly made it here before after the huge lead they had. On top of that, Julius is alone, so Vil has to worry about the possibility that Julius's other teammates are hiding somewhere to ambush him. Julius begins to cast a hail of icicles at Vil, so Vil doesn't have time to worry about the possibility of an ambush and starts running away for now. He just needs to get serious and deal with Julius. But it looks like Xian is getting serious as well as he begins the casting process for an unbelievably powerful inferno. But he seems to be staring at Vil a little too much, so Colette warns Vil that Xian might be aiming for him. As Xian fires the spell, Colette creates a rock wall in front of Vil in order to keep him from getting burnt to ash. Xian's blast creates a massive shockwave throughout the battlefield, and Vil is a little confused about what just happened. He looks up and sees that the forest has been completely incinerated, and Xian walks up to Vil, saying Julius was in the way. He may have taken Julius out as well, but there's no doubt in Colette's mind that Soon fired that spell with the intention of killing Vil. Colette asks what he thinks he is doing, but Xian believes he is justified in his actions. He played along with Colette's request and joined their team so that Vil could participate in this event, so now he wants the favor paid back by having a one-on-one fight with Vil. Vil asks why Xian wants to fight all of a sudden, and why it has to be now of all times, but Xian doesn't feel like explaining himself and fires a warning shot at Vil. Colette tries to interfere and stop him, but before she can do so, she is blocked by a wall of ice from Julius, who somehow managed to survive that deadly blast. Colette is in trouble, so Vil wants to go save her, but Xian isn't going to let Vil go until he has gotten a proper fight out of him, so he shoots some fireballs at Vil which knock his sword out of his hand. Vil tries to reason with Xian so they can do this another time, but Xian is dead set on fighting him, so he tells Vil to pick up his sword so they can have a duel, and with no other options, Vil agrees to face him. To Xian, Vil looked pitiful from the very first day he laid eyes on him, but at the time, Xian felt genuine sympathy for Vil and all the bullying he was suffering, and he really wanted to help him. So he tried to convince Vil to become his subordinate, because that way, no one would be able to bully him anymore. However, Vil completely ignored him and kept walking around the corner. Xian runs to catch up to him, but as he grabbed Vil and told him to take the offer seriously, Vil looks him dead in the eyes and tells Xian to get out of his way. Xian may have pitied Vil, but Vil never pitied himself for a minute. Rather, he was always looking forward to his goal, and Xian couldn't accept the fact that Vil had rejected his kindness and ignored him as though he were a side character. So from that day forward, Xian started to hate Vil. Back to the present, Vil is running amongst the trees in an attempt to evade Xian's fireballs. But as he hides behind a tree, Xian sends some homing fireballs which nearly hit Vil and send him flying across the forest floor. He catches himself with his sword, but Xian sends her another flame attack in his direction, so Vil is forced to use the sword to deflect it, and while he is distracted, Xian catches him off guard with a fire whip which swings him around the forest. Vil eventually manages to cut himself free, but Xian is right there to attack him with a devastating explosion spell. Luckily, Vil deflects this as well, But it is starting to get on Xian's nerves that Vil is doing nothing but evading when they are meant to be having an all-out fight. Vil responds by saying he doesn't want to have to fight with Xian here. The only reason he joined this competition in the first place was to get justice for Danan and the other dwarves, so he doesn't have time to waste on a pointless fight with Xian right now. Xian is enraged that Vil still isn't taking him seriously even in a situation like this, so he threatens to burn Vil to ash if he doesn't start treating this like a serious fight. The crowd is shocked to see Xian fighting Vil when they are supposed to be on the same team since something like this has never happened before. Mike asks Edward for his opinion on the matter, and Edward says it's disgraceful for students in the same team to be fighting amongst themselves, and given that the objective of the competition is teamwork, Vil's team is sure to lose points with the scouts. But at the same time, he seems really pleased that Xian is messing up Vil's chances of winning this event. Everyone in the crowd is shocked that Xian would be short-sighted enough to attack his own teammate because of a personal grudge, and the scouts are definitely taking note of this behavior pattern. Rosti is worried about Vil's safety, but he also can't help but feel intrigued to find out what's going to happen next anyway. As he is watching in anticipation, Iris approaches him and asks if she can sit next to him. Rosti seems to recognize her, so he says he is fine with her sitting next to him, so Iris takes a seat and immediately begins cheering for Vil. Rosti is surprised she would go out of her way to support Vil since she always looked like a meek person to him, and Iris admits that this is out of character for her. But after she was introduced to Vil, she couldn't help but feel captivated by him. Rosti can understand the feeling, but he's starting to get jealous that Vil is so popular with the ladies, and even Xian as well, since he is technically fighting because Vil never gave him any attention. Naturally, Rosti loves Vil most out of anyone since he is Vil's roommate, but you could say the same about Colette since she has always been by Vil's side, no matter what. Even now, as she's being attacked by Julius, the only thing on her mind is how she can get Xian to stop fighting Vil, so he doesn't lose this competition. However, she won't be able to do anything about Xian and Vil's fight while Julius is here. Julius mocks Colette for running away from him this entire time when she is known as the Earth Princess for her skills, but Colette never liked that title, so she threatens to make him regret it if he calls her Earth Princess again. Julius sends more icicles after Colette, so Colette uses earth magic to create a wall in front of herself and stop the ice. However, Julius wasn't aiming at her alone as one of the icicles hits the ground and activates one of Edward's traps, so before she can react, she is caught in a massive energy blast. While that is going on, the spectators begin noticing something off about Julius, and it's the fact that he is on every screen at the same time. Somehow, Julius is fighting every student involved in this competition at the same time, but the method he is using remains an absolute mystery. Julius also challenges Wignall's team, and Wignall is fine with the added challenge of facing Julius. But before they begin, he says he wants to return the ice flower Julius gave him. With a wave of his wand, Wignall makes Julius's ice flower appear in the sky, and this distracts Julius long enough for Wignall to create a magic circle beneath his feet and obliterate Julius in an instant. But while the others are confused, Wignall recognizes that this is what Julius meant when he said he would win with his trump card, and he has to admit, a Magiavander level spell is quite impressive. Mike isn't sure what exactly happened there, but Wignall has just defeated Julius, who suddenly appeared right in front of him, and coincidentally, Mike bet all his money on Wignall, so he's really hyped to see him performing well. Meanwhile, from above the stadium, two elf girls from the elf faction are watching the festival. Lefaya asks Phyllis what she thinks of the students at the academy, and the only thing Phyllis can say is that they are doing about as well as she had expected them to do. The general opinion regarding the competition is that either Julius or Wignall is going to win, and that Vil might have had a chance if only Xian hadn't done this. But his friends know that this is way out of character for him, so they are wondering what could have made him act so rashly. Laryl thinks he can understand why Xian is doing all this, and it's not that he is trying to get Vil expelled because he hates him, he just wants to prove something. We cut back to Vil and Xian's fight, and Vil can't understand what he has done to deserve this much hate from Xian. Ever since he enrolled in this school, he has never done anything wrong, yet he was relentlessly bullied by his peers for his lack of magic. He was aware that he was a flunky, so he never asked for recognition or tried to be selfish, but people kept messing with him, which is why the day Xian tried to help him, Vil misunderstood it as another act of bullying and walked away. Back to the present, Vil dodges another one of Xian's fireballs, but the next attack Xian has prepared won't be so easy to dodge. He summons a Firehawk Guardian, and Vil is shocked because summoning a Guardian is really high-level magic. Xian sends the Guardian to attack Vil, and Vil needs to think quickly to avoid getting burnt, So he sticks his sword in the ground and leaps over the bird to slice off one of its wings, and immediately after, he begins charging towards Xian to attack him. However, the Guardian regenerates its wings in an instant and begins charging at Vil from behind. So Vil now has his attention divided between handling Xian, who is attacking from the front, and defending against the Guardian from behind. He makes a split-second decision, jumping out of the way of the Guardian's attack and moving his sword to his other hand so he can block Xian's attack, but Vil is still struggling to hold his ground against Xian's flames. He eventually deflects the fireball. It has left both him and Xian winded. Back at the stadium, Edward is in shock at the level of skill Xian just displayed because it is far above the level a student should be capable of. Not only was he able to use such a powerful fire spell at the start of the fight, but he can also flawlessly summon a Guardian to aid him in battle. The scouts hadn't realized that Xian possessed such precise control over his magic, and it didn't line up with the reports they'd received about him, since all of his records say that he was a decent magic student, but not outstanding enough to be labeled as one of the school's top talents. However, something must have happened recently to make him improve this much. They'll need to prepare a new report for Carriot, since it looks like they've found their latest scouting candidate. Vil also realizes that Xian has gotten a lot stronger than he used to be, but begins to yell at Vil because he knows Vil is still holding back against him. He wants Vil to use the strength he showed when he was up against the evil Sentinel, but the situation was different back then. It's one thing to go all out to kill a monster, but Vil sees no reason why he should be fighting Xian right now. Xian can't believe that after all the years of hating on Vil and humiliating him any chance he could get, that Vil still doesn't resent him. However, Vil never said he doesn't resent Xian. He can't even count the number of times he had thought about getting revenge for all the things Xian has done to him. But now isn't the time for that, because he needs to focus on defeating Julius instead. Hearing those words come out of Vil's mouth makes Xian incredibly angry, because even now Vil is still ignoring him. He doesn't care about Vil's problems or whatever goals he wants to accomplish. He just wants Vil to look at him and face him like a worthy rival rather than some insignificant obstacle. While Vil never tried to act in a selfish manner, he still always has a part of him wishing that someone would recognize his skill, but he didn't think it would ever happen. He never knew Xian thought so highly of him, but now that he does, if Xian truly wants Vil to acknowledge him as an opponent, then Vil has no choice but to face him seriously. Xian is happy to see that Vil is finally taking him seriously, so he begins casting another spell. Vil realizes that if he tries to attack now, then the Guardian is sure to intercept him, so he decides to wait for the moment when Xian casts his spell to counterattack. As Xian finishes his spell incantation, he orders his Guardian to attack while he simultaneously casts a wide-range annihilation spell. This simultaneous attack would normally be unavoidable, however, Vil already saw the trajectories of all the fireballs, so he dashes forward and skillfully runs in between the gaps in the attacks. He then leaps into the air and destroys the core of the Guardian. And with no more obstacles in his way, he charges straight for Xian to take him out. Xian expected as much from Vil, but he isn't out of defensive measures yet, as he casts a last-minute fireball at Vil. However, before the two can clash, Colette creates a giant rock wall in between them. Both Vil and Xian weren't expecting this, so they fall to the ground, and as they look over, they see a smoking mad Colette who has had most of her clothes burned off. Vil asks Colette what happened to Julius, so she answers that she beat him to a pulp, but then he turned into ice and disappeared. Xian is confused when she says Julius disappeared, but then he realizes something even more shocking. Colette's clothes are almost entirely burnt off. He tells her she is showing way too much skin for a noble lady, but she reminds Xian that it was his flames that did this to her clothes in the first place. She then tells Vil that he should go on ahead without them, since he needs to catch up to Julius before he captures the crown. Xian tries to argue that he hasn't finished his duel with Vil yet, but she shuts him down and says it is really important that Vil beats Julius here, and thus was pretty much his only chance to show the tower how capable he truly is, but Xian had to go and ruin it. Vil stops her rant and thanks her for being worried about him, but he can still make it in time. He apologizes to Xian and tells him they can complete their duel another time, but Xian still wanted to settle the fight today. Back at the stadium, the first team to arrive is Julius's team, and it looks like nothing can stop them now. But right outside the stadium, Vil is running in at full speed, and just before Julius's team can claim the crown, he crash lands in the middle of the arena and tells Julius that it's time to settle this. Up in the magic tower, Alferia is peacefully sitting by the window when her assistant, Sorcerer, walks into the room. At first, Sorcerer apologizes for intruding on Alferia's meditation, But then she realizes Elfaria is just sleeping, so she smacks her across the head. Elfaria wakes up and complains that Sorcerer didn't need to hit her that hard, but Sorcerer tells her that she should take her status as a Magiavander more seriously. It's a massively important role, yet Elfaria spends most of her time either sleeping or watching the world down below. Elfaria asks Sorcerer why she came here, so Sorcerer tells her that she has brought a list of promising candidates the scouts have selected. As Elfaria looks over the list, Sorcerer tells her that the candidates of this year's festival are exceptional, but there is one that stands out among the rest for their ice faction. The one she's referring to is Julius, and from his stats, Sorcerer believes he may even one day become Elfaria's successor as Ice Magiavander. Elfaria admits that Julius certainly looks promising and he could become her successor one day, but that's only if everything reported about him turns out to be true. Down in the stadium, Vil squares off against Julius and his team, and victory goes to whoever is able to grab the crown first, so Julius could just grab it since he's closer, but he wouldn't be satisfied unless he brutally defeats and humiliates Vil in front of a huge crowd. Vil tells him that he has no intention of losing and readies his sword, so Julius begins his attack by casting a smokescreen. Vil can't see anything, but he can still hear the footsteps of 3 people around him, so he realizes that Julius and his team must be trying to surround him so they can attack from all directions. All of a sudden, an ice ball comes flying at Vil from behind, so he jumps out of the way and begins running to make himself a harder target to hit. Even with his vision blocked, he will be able to determine their locations from the trajectories of their attacks, so as 2 more ice balls come flying at him, Vil believes he has determined all their locations and jumps in to attack Julius. However, as he does so, he is blindsided by a 4th attack. Vil gets knocked back and he doesn't understand where that 4th shot could have come from since he should only have 3 opponents, but his confusion only worsens as he looks over and sees that Julius and his team never even moved from their original positions. Yet Vil is sure that he was still getting attacked by Julius, but there are 5 of him now for some reason. The first thing that comes to Vil's mind is that this must be some kind of illusion magic, but the hits he has been taking are very real, so he soon realizes that the spell is way too complex for mere illusion magic. Julius is creating clones of himself, and he forgot to mention this earlier, but his clones also explode on command, and one happens to be right in front of Vil. So once Julius gives the command, it explodes and encases Vil in a thick layer of ice. This turn of events is certainly exciting, but the crowd is more focused on trying to figure out what kind of magic Julius is using. However, Edward and Worker immediately recognize what kind of magic this is, and Worker explains that it is one of the secret arts discovered by the gifted ice Magiavander Elfaria. She created and mastered 12 unique ice spells, and Julius is currently using the first in the series, Ars Weiss. It is a spell that creates icy copies of its caster, and Vil is furious that Julius would dare to use a spell made by his Elfie. Julius just laughs and says his natural talent is what allowed him to learn the spell, as he was able to learn it by studying on his own. So even if it's only 1 out of the 12 spells, he believes he is now on par with a Magiavander. And that means Elfie isn't all that impressive, and one day he is going to expose her as a fraud. There are a lot of things Vil will overlook, but calling Elfie a fraud isn't one of them, so he breaks out of the ice and charges forward at Julius to make him regret those words. But Julius uses his clones to attack Vil with more ice balls. His clones move exactly how he tells them to, and they can use magic as well, so Julius can keep Vil busy for as long as he needs to. And not only that, once Vil is in position, Julius is able to cast a spell through his clones that seals Vil inside an impenetrable ice barrier. Once Vil is immobilized, Julius proceeds to cast a giant ice meteor and sends it hurtling straight for him. With nowhere to go, Vil ends up being crushed by the ice meteor, and the crowd begins cheering for his amazing strength, and even Edward has to give him credit for his outstanding performance as he won that battle without taking a single step with his real body. With all eyes on him, Julius takes the opportunity to declare that his ice magic has become unmatched after acquiring one of Elfaria's spells, so he is going to make sure he becomes her successor as the next Ice Magiavander. Julius did all this just so he could show off his power to the scouts, and his claims certainly seem realistic, but it's going to be really embarrassing if he ends up losing this fight after everything he just said. In the next moment, Julius hears the sound of ice cracking, and in utter shock, he turns around as the meteor crumbles to pieces and Vil walks out mostly unharmed. Vil thanks Julius for giving him a chance to cool off, since he has a bad habit of getting hot-headed and impulsive whenever someone slanders Elfie's name, but he won't make that mistake again. Julius attacks Vil again with his ice clones, but this time, Vil calmly evades the ice and appears behind Julius's teammates. Vil then knocks the 2 of them out in one swift motion, and as he does this, Julius's ice clones crumble to the ground. From the moment he saw Julius's clone spell, he knew it was incomplete, Julius could use the spell briefly, but he was never able to handle the spell on his own for extended durations, which is why he had his teammates help him with the casting. If he needs to do all this just to mimic a fraction of Elfie's power, then Julius is nowhere near being a match for her. Unlike the Guardian spells that act on their own will, the ice clones must be actively controlled, and they take a lot of mental fortitude to manage, something Julius clearly doesn't have if he needed the help of his teammates to use the clones effectively. So basically, Vil is calling Julius a fraud. Julius is enraged by Vil's statement, so he tells him to shut up and attacks with some of his ice roses, but Vil is easily able to slice through them all. However, as the roses hit the floor, they explode, creating another smokescreen and obstructing Vil's view long enough for Julius to cast his ice clones again. All the clones begin firing ice balls at Vil, but he is easily able to dodge the attacks regardless of the direction it is coming from. Julius hates to admit it, but what Vil said about his clone spell being incomplete is true. The most he can manage is 4 clones at once, and without his friends to help him, he has limited control over the clones, so the best he can do is remain on the defensive. However, Vil should have no way of knowing which one is the real Julius because all the clones are a perfect image of him and his peak male physique, so Vil will never find him. Never mind, Vil found him. Julius has started, so he raises a wall to defend himself from Vil's sword, but Vil cuts straight through it and sends Julius flying with a piece of his own ice. Julius doesn't understand how Vil could have found him so quickly when all the clones are perfectly identical to him, but Vil reminds him of a key difference. The clones are made of ice. The body temperature of the ice clones is the exact opposite of the body temperature of the user. This means they are pretty cold, and normally with good control the caster can prevent the cold from leaking out of the clone, but Julius doesn't have that level of control over the clones, so the cold eventually caused ice to form under the feet of all the clones. Julius doesn't understand how someone who can't use magic knows the ins and outs of this spell better than him, but there's a simple reason for that. He has been friends with Elfie since they were children. They grew up in the same orphanage, so Vil got to see her magic up close many times. He adored and studied it, but he was never good enough to catch up to her level of talent. That is why Vil knows all the strengths and weaknesses of Elfie's magic. Julius tells Vil to be quiet because he must be lying. Elfaria is a Magiavander, and this spell is one of her secret arts, so how could Vil ever claim to be able to beat it? He tries firing another ice shard at Vil, but Vil barely moves as he slashes away, and Julius falls to his feet in defeat. Vil says he respects Julius and his talent, and it's true that until now, no mage has been able to replicate one of Elfaria's spells, but he's got some bad news for him. Elfie invented that clone spell when she was only 2 years old, so it's far from a perfect spell, and it's full of weaknesses, yet Julius is flaunting it around like he is the next greatest mage. Julius is starting to feel really stupid because he thought he was an elite mage for replicating Elfaria's spell, but it turns out he has been bragging about copying the achievements of a toddler his whole time. This revelation caused Julius to break out in hysterical laughter as he realizes he has been grossly overestimating himself when comparing with Elfaria, but he still isn't going to let that stop him from defeating Vil. Julius yells out in anger and summons 8 clones around Vil. He laughs while saying that 4 clones aren't his actual limit, and for now he can just ignore his control over the clones and use the sheer number of spells he can cast to overwhelm Vil. Vil can tell that Julius is getting really worked up, and it's obvious that he is trying his best, but Vil has already had to deal with 10 Elfie clones bullying him when he was a kid, so 8 Juliuses is barely a challenge for him. As Julius casts the spells, Vil runs forward while dodging and stabs one of the Julius clones right through the head. Julius sees this and realizes that could have been him, so he's now scared of what Vil might do to him and is running away. Vil continues to charge while destroying the clones along the way, and no matter what Julius throws at him, Vil is always one step ahead and easily blocks it. Eventually, Vil has destroyed all the clones, leaving only the real Julius, so to finish him off, he runs up with his fist clenched and punches Julius so hard that it has to be replayed 3 times. With this, Vil has officially beaten Julius, and everyone in the crowd begins cheering for him. His performance has earned him a lot of respect among the student body, and while he may be exhausted, there is no one left to stand in his way, so all he needs to do is go pick up the crown and put it on his head. However, while he was busy figuring Julius, he failed to realize that Wignall's team had entered the stadium, so in a disappointing turn of events, Wignall is crowned the winner of the crown attack. Up in the magic tower, Sarissa tells Elfie that the crown attack has concluded, but Elfie can't bear to show her face for some reason. She asks Sarissa if there are any spells to rewrite the past or erase people's memories, and there may be something like that in the Forbidden Spells book, but Sarissa isn't going to let Elfie use it for such a trivial reason. Elfie is on the verge of tears because she didn't know Vil thought she was bullying him all those years ago. She just wanted to play with Vil back then, but now the whole school thinks she was bullying him. Back down in the stadium, Vil accepts that he lost the crown attack and takes his seat to rest for a bit, and at the same time, Xian is glaring at him because he realizes that if Vil was able to beat someone like Julius, then Xian needs to work harder before he can be a worthy opponent for him. Colette runs up to Vil, and she's glad he is okay, but Vil apologizes for failing to grab the crown after all the stress he put her and Xian through, but at least he was able to keep his promise to Elfie this time. Vil may not have won the event, but what's important here is that Julius took an outstanding L, so it's still a victory for Vil, and all of his friends gather at the bar and have a celebratory dinner. Later on in the night, Donnan asks if Vil ended up getting scouted by the tower, but Colette says he didn't, and it was expected since not only did Vil's team have an internal battle, but he also didn't actually win the event. Colette blames Xian for this since Vil could have won easily if he wasn't delayed by Xian's tantrum during the event. Rosti asks where Xian is right now, so Vil explains that he did try to invite Xian, but Xian didn't look like he wanted to come. Donnan says it's fine even if he didn't get scouted because he won his fight with Julius and got him to apologize. Speaking of Julius, he is currently in the back washing dishes as part of his apology to the dwarves. He hates having to do this, but he lost to Vil, so he has to keep her promise since he is a man of his word, even if it means working here for a while. Everyone other than Julius is having a good time, but Colette notices that Werkner seems to be worried about something. She asks him if he isn't enjoying the party, but that's not the problem. He didn't stop Vil from entering the event because he saw how motivated Vil was to win, but now that he has shown the entire school what he is capable of, Werkner is worried about how Vil will be treated from here on out. Colette had thought people would just treat Vil better since they now know how powerful he is, but Werkner says it's never that simple. The next day at school, students have started getting ready for the all-student praxis event, which entails a full week of dungeon diving. A lot of the students are worried about it and haven't decided on their parties yet, so as Vil is walking down the halls with Colette, he gets approached by a couple of his classmates, and they nervously ask him if he will join their team for the dungeon raid. They saw how powerful he is, so they would like his help. However, before Vil could respond, another set of students walk up and say they want Vil on their team as well. More and more students begin arguing over who gets to team up with Vil, and Colette now realizes that this is what Werkner meant when he said people would treat Vil differently. Now that they know he's not a weakling, they all suddenly want to be friends with him, and she thinks that's really hypocritical. She gets in front of Vil and yells at the other students for having the audacity to try to befriend Vil now after all the bullying they put him through. She is sure Vil must be angry about it as well, but on the contrary, Vil has never had people act so friendly towards him, so he's just really happy that people actually like him now. Since Vil doesn't seem to be mad about the bullying anymore, one of the girls tells Colette to stay out of this and let Vil decide who he wants to go with. But just as she tries to convince Vil to join her team, Colette smacks the girl's hand away and says she already has plans to go shopping with Vil tomorrow. She said it in the spur of the moment, but later that night, Colette is cringing at the fact that she accidentally asked Vil out on a date. Her roommate comes into the room and teases Colette about having a date with Vil tomorrow, but Colette screams that she didn't mean for it to be a date. Rose doesn't argue with her about it, but Colette is still going to go shopping with Vil, so she should at least prepare herself for it. Colette agrees and says she should at least put in a good amount of effort, otherwise she would be rude to Vil. Meanwhile, in Vil's room, Vil is currently up doing a bit of study, and Rossi decides to ask about Vil's plans for tomorrow. There aren't any classes scheduled, so he asks if Vil will be going into the dungeon again, but Vil informs him that he actually has a shopping date planned with Colette tomorrow. She persuaded him to go since he had to get his supplies ready for the all-student praxis event anyway. Vil doesn't think it's that big of a deal, but Rossi is clearly very jealous. The next day, Colette is sitting in the city square and nervously waiting for Vil to arrive. Even if she asked him out unintentionally, she's going to do everything in her power to make sure this becomes a real date. Soon after, Vil arrives and says hello. He compliments Colette on her new dress and hairstyle, saying she looks really pretty, and this makes Colette a bit embarrassed. But before they can head off on their date, Rosti comes running. Colette has no idea why he's here, so Vil explains that Rosti was really insistent on tagging along for the shopping trip no matter what, so Vil decided to let him come. Rosti says it'll be much more fun with him around, but he just doesn't want Vil to be alone with Colette. He goes up to Vil and grabs his hand so they can start the shopping trip, but Colette is starting to question the relationship Rosti has with Vil once they start holding hands like this. And Rosti seems like he's trying to steal Vil from her, but it's still not gay because they are wearing socks. Throughout the entire day, every time Colette tries to spend some time with Vil, Rosti always gets in the way. So much so that by the time the date is almost over, she hasn't gotten a single moment with him. While Rosti is gone, she asked Vil what's up with his relationship with Rosti, because the two of them are way too close to be regular roommates. She accuses Rosti of secretly being a girl since he has such a pretty face, but Vil says that can't be possible because the two of them take baths together and Rosti has more length and girth than Vil does. Sure, Rosti may be a little handsy, but he always says no homo, so it's probably just his way of being friendly. Rosti soon returns with 2 drinks and hands one to Colette and Vil, but Vil notices that Rosti didn't get one for himself. However, Rosti says it's alright since he can just share Vil's drink instead. Colette has had enough of Rosti's antics and stops him by saying he can have her drink instead, but this gets on Rosti's nerves, so he gives Colette the side eye and tells Vil to go do the rest of his errands without them. Vil argues a bit, but eventually he agrees to go on without them, and as soon as he is gone, Colette directly asks Rosti if he is really just Vil's roommate, because to her, it looks like he's way too affectionate. Rosti gets up and walks in front of Colette to assert his dominance as he tells her that he loves Vil more than anyone, so he's not going to let her try to take him. Colette tries to assert that she is close to Vil as well since they used to hug each other all the time up until 4 years ago, although it embarrasses her to think about it now. Rosti doesn't think it's that much of a big deal since he takes a bath with Vil every night, so he is way more intimate with Vil than she is. While they are arguing over who has more of a right to spend time with Vil, Vil is on his way to the blacksmith shop down an alleyway. However, as he is walking, he hears someone call his name and turns around to find Lehana standing behind him. Vil is surprised to see her here since he never thought someone as renowned as the #1 student would have business with him. He asks her if she needs something, so she tells him that she has something she would like to discuss with him. She says it won't take long, so she asks Vil to follow her for a bit. And after some walking, Vil is led to a room with Julius, Wignall, and Sheehan. Lehana then addresses everyone and tells them that the reason she has called them all together is because this is the final term of their last year, meaning the all-student praxis exam is coming up, and she would like the 5 of them to form a team. Sheehan and Julius refuse to believe that Lehana is suggesting they add Vil to their team, and Vil doesn't understand why Lehana would bring him to a meeting when 2 of the people who hate him the most are right here. However, she still doesn't see how it was probably a bad idea, so Vil realizes that she has no situational awareness. Sheehan gets up to threaten Vil, but before things get out of hand, Wignall waves his wand and casts some high-level illusion magic to get everyone to calm down. He then says there is no reason for Sheehan to start acting so barbaric all of a sudden, and everyone should at least hear what Lehana has to say before they do anything rash. Once everyone is calmed down, Lehana tells them all that in preparation for the all-student praxis. She wants to form a team with all the best students of the academy, as well as all the students who stood out at the festival. That's why Vil is here, because he has skills which all of them lack, so she judged that he would be a good addition to the team. Julius says he doesn't think it's a good idea since having someone like Vil who can't use search would only slow them down. Just because Vil admittedly smashed Julius's face in, that doesn't mean he would be a valuable asset to the team. Sheehan also doesn't want Vil to join their team, but his reason is that he just doesn't like Vil. Wignall thinks it's childishness for the 2 of them to reject Vil because of their own petty grudges. Vil has already proven that he can defeat both Sheehan and Julius, so why do they think they have the right to look down on him? Vil has incredible brute strength and monster-like agility, so while his methods may not be the most sophisticated, he was still able to outclass Julius and Sheehan's most powerful magic. Julius takes a jab at Wignall for acting all high and mighty when he is only #2 in credits, but Wignall feels no shame in it and says that is precisely why he respects Lehana's opinion as #1. If she says Vil is skilled enough to be a part of their team, then Wignall will respect Vil as well. However, he still doesn't respect either Julius or Sheehan. Lehana speaks up again and tells everyone that she wants to use this team to climb the tower as the top student in the academy. She wants to guarantee a better future for herself, but Vil can't understand why she is going through all this trouble when her performance at the festival should have been more than enough to get her scouted by the tower. Lehana admits that the Thunder faction did reach out to her, meaning she has a guaranteed post-graduation placement, but that isn't enough for her. All the students at the academy are basically the leftovers who weren't good enough to advance before graduation. In her family, it is common for mages to die young, so in order to prevent that fate for herself, she wants to aim for the top and become a Mangiavander. She believes everyone here shares that same ambition, so she asks all who are interested in forming the team to place a coin in the goblet to show their commitment. Wignall is the first to accept her proposal since there's no team that could achieve better than this one. Julius agrees as well since it will earn him more credits, and so does Sheehan. The only one left is Vil, and he is unsure what decision he should make. Late into the evening, Vil finally returns to Rosti and Colette, and they've been worried sick about him since they had no idea where he went. Vil doesn't explain where he has been, but he tells them that he has decided to join Lehana's team for the all-student praxis. Later in class, Worker is giving the students a briefing on the all-student praxis and tells them that the floors that used to be off-limits will now be unlocked, so students will now be able to go down to floors 7 through 10, meaning they can earn a lot more credits than they used to. This is an event where students can earn more than 1,000 credits all at once, so whether it's to make up for some missing credits or to earn some kind of achievement, this is truly a great opportunity for them. But they also need to be quite careful because there's still the chance that some of them may die. For example, last year, 4 students ended up getting eaten by monsters. Steps have been taken to minimize risks by having professors stationed at key locations to ensure students' safety, but that has never stopped people from finding new ways to get themselves killed. Lehana's team enters the dungeon, and for some reason, Colette decided to tag along even though she wasn't invited, and when Lehana points it out, Colette gets defensive, saying she has to go wherever Vil goes. Rosti also wanted to come, but since he is an artificer, he is required to stay at base camp for the entire duration of the exam. However, he still prepared a lot of magic items for Vil, so without further delay, the all-student praxis exam begins. Lord Cariot is informed of the commencement of the all-student praxis exam, but he doesn't recall ever signing up to be the representative of the Magiavanders, so he doesn't see why he should care. The messenger explains that someone has to do it, and frankly, Lord Cariot is the only one who actually takes the job seriously, so he's the only option. Cariot resigns himself to the task, but he wonders why their king still hasn't returned from his expedition when the barrier is on the verge of collapse. Back to the praxis exam, Lehana's team sprints into the lead as soon as the event begins, and Vil is determined to get good results here and move up the tower to meet Elfie. But in the next moment, Lehana gives Wignall the signal to give everyone a boost, so he casts a wind spell and sends them all flying off the side of a cliff. But before they hit the ground, he casts another spell to keep them from crashing. As Vil is getting up, a crimson ant appears behind them, and it's followed by an entire swarm of them. So Vil readies his sword because mages aren't suited for close combat. However, Wignall stops him and says there is no need for him to do anything yet since Lehana can handle this by herself. The Owenzos family, which Lehana belongs to, is a family of knights, so Lehana is a unique type of mage that specializes in close combat spell casting, so something like this is within her area of expertise. She turns back and tells the group that it would be troublesome if they had to start competing with other students for credits, so to get the best results, they need to stay ahead of everyone else. A long time ago, Vil was taught by Worker that the most important spell in a dungeon is the search spell because it allows a mage to quickly identify any monsters or anomalies in the area, but Vil can't use it, so by the time he realizes a monster has appeared, someone else has already taken it out. If things keep going this way, then he will never get the chance to actually do anything. Eventually, Vil manages to defeat a monster, but immediately after, Wignall casts a spell and defeats all the monsters in the area. He was on Lehana's side about bringing Vil along earlier, but Vil is surprisingly useless when it comes to dungeon fights. Lehana says Vil just hasn't had the chance to display the full extent of his skills because these are all weak monsters, or maybe he is just useless, but they'll have to just wait and see. Julius says that he warned everyone that Vil would only slow them down since he can't use search, and he begins absorbing the magic traces from the monsters as proof of his kill. Mages are able to do this to verify their kills with the Academy, but Vil isn't able to do this, so he has to pick up monster drops in order to verify his kills with the Academy, and it always inevitably slows him down. The group starts going on ahead without him, and Vil has to run to catch up to them. Colette asks if Vil is alright, and he says he is fine since he already knew he would be a liability for the team, so he's just going to have to do his best to be helpful to the team in some way. At least that's what he wants to do, but as the team continues to progress through the dungeon, Vil hasn't managed to do a single useful thing yet. By the time a day has passed in the dungeon, Lehana says they should stop off now and take a break. The others are happy to get a chance to rest, but this place isn't exactly the safest place to be resting since there are a ton of monsters around her. Wignall says he can help with that and creates a wall of flames using illusion magic. The flames aren't actually hot, but the sight of a wall of fire is sure to keep most monsters away, so it's a good option for a male shift camp. Lehana asks Vil to distribute the food rations she gave him earlier, and Vil hands them out to everyone. But when it comes to Wignall's turn, Wignall tells him not to come any closer because he doesn't want to touch Vil at all. Elves will only ever touch people whom they view as worthy, and it's not personal, but Wignall kinda thinks Vil is a bum, so he wants nothing to do with him. In fact, Wignall thinks everyone here aside from Lehana is a bum as well, since none of them have displayed a decent level of competence to him. Wignall's comments don't bother Vil because he knows elves have their own culture. Like the dwarves, elves come from another world, but they actually have magic, so they are treated well here. They are known to be snobbish and tend to only associate with other elves, but they do indeed have more magical talent than most mages, and one of the Magiavanders is even the Elven Queen, so they got a lot of influence. Once everyone is seated, Lehana says she wants to discuss the plan one more time, and she reminds everyone that her ultimate goal here is to defeat Neighborus, the boss that guards the 10th floor of the dungeon. It is worth over 100 credits on its own, and it's pretty common for students to die fighting it, so Lehana wants to be well prepared for the fight when the time comes. Wignall is on board with her idea, but he is getting bored of having to fight weak monsters, so he suggests that they skip straight to the boss fight. Lehana agrees with him and says they'll take the shortest route to the 10th floor in order to conserve magic for the fight, and they can continue hunting regular monsters afterwards. Vil is pretty hesitant about fighting a floor boss, but he has only managed to earn 5 credits today, so he needs to start working harder if he intends to make the most of this exam. While the team begins their journey to the 10th floor, we get a look deeper into the dungeon where we see 2 people talking, and one of them has just killed a couple of students because he thought they were annoying, so these guys are clearly dangerous. Back with Vil's group, Julius is confident because they keep seeing monster corpses everywhere, but there aren't any other teams in the area, so it's a mystery what could have done this. Vil takes a look at one of the dead monsters, and he discovers that there are no traces of magic on the monster, so it must have been killed by sheer brute force. For now, Lehana chooses to ignore the strange scenario and tells everyone to get ready for the fight because Nebrus's lair is just up ahead. But as they approach, Vil is still on edge because the dungeon is unbelievably quiet, especially since this is supposed to be a boss monster's lair. Now that he thinks about it, they should have encountered Nebrus by now. So Vil raises his lantern, and to his surprise, he discovers that something has already killed a floor boss. This means whatever did this could still be in the area, so Lehana asks everyone to use search quickly to locate it, but they aren't able to find anything. Search is incredibly useful in a dungeon, but it still has its flaws, such as the fact that it is really hard to detect well-made traps, and other mages who are able to use the counterspell, Hide. And on top of that, some monsters are simply able to avoid detection by the search spell. Knowing this, Vil locks in with his senses, and he is able to hear a sound coming from above them, so he looks up and sees a terrifying monster about to hit them with a laser beam. He warns everyone to get out of the way, and as the blast is fired, he does his best to delay the impact so the others don't get hit. In all the chaos, the monster sneaks up behind Wignall, and he is the first one to get one shot. But now that everyone else knows the monster's position, they all begin casting their attack spells to defeat it. However, before they can finish, the monster strikes the ground and causes the floor to collapse beneath them, sending all of them deeper into the dungeon. Vil is the only one who is able to react to the situation, and since Wignall is still unconscious, he dashes over to him to make sure he survives the fall. Vil and Wignall end up falling into this red area, and Vil notices that Wignall's arm is badly wounded, so he would like to get him some medical attention. But since they fell from the 10th floor, that means they must be on the 11th floor right now. Shion and Julius ended up in the same area, and they are absolutely terrified because the 11th floor is a danger zone that only high mages are able to survive. Similarly, Lehana realizes the gravity of the situation she finds herself in, as the monsters in this place are distinctly more powerful than the monsters on any of the other floors here. And to make things worse, she's injured from the fall. She says her injury isn't that bad, and it's good that she landed here with Colette, but it's dangerous for them to be separated from the others for long since this floor is unpredictably dangerous. We get a look into Wignall's past, and he was apparently cast out from his society for being weak, and it has left him traumatized ever since. He wakes up to the sound of a giant snake head falling beside him, and he is confused since he doesn't believe Vil would be capable of killing something like that. Vil is glad to see that Wignall is awake again, but as he approaches him to help, Wignall smacks Vil's hand away and says he refuses to touch a talentless failure. Vil tells him that he doesn't care if Wignall hates him or has some kind of prejudice towards him, but Wignall isn't going to last long like this, so he needs to treat his arm. Wignall realizes Vil is right, but he says he will treat his arm by himself, so he just wants Vil to bring the supplies to him. After Wignall is done patching himself up, Vil starts thinking about the situation, and from every indication, they are royally fucked. Wignall is injured, so he isn't going to be as strong as he usually is, and their baggage has been ruined as well. Luckily, Vil still has the magic items that Rosti prepared for him, and he's also got the food rations with him, but Colette and the others should have at least a few days worth of supplies in their personal packs, so they should be able to survive on their own for a while. But in these extreme conditions, you can't predict what could happen, so Vil needs to find them before anyone dies. He tells Wignall that they need to get moving, but Wignall insists that it is better to sit still and wait for help. Vil tells him that's a dumb idea because they've already gotten attacked by a snake monster once, and with that monster on the 10th floor, there's no way help will be arriving anytime soon. Back at one of the base camps, everyone is in a panic as the base camp has been raided by dozens of monsters. Worker calls Professor Eliza and asks her what happened, So she informs him that there was a monster stampede here, and 2 of the other professors were killed and had their heads ripped off their bodies. She has also lost contact with the base camps on the 9th and 10th floors, so she thinks the situation must be bad down there as well. Werkner thinks it's no coincidence that all these catastrophes happen at the same time, so he speculates that this may have been planned by someone. For now, the Praxis event is officially cancelled, and both Werkner and Edward rush down to help the students, while Roasty is standing in the background looking very worried. Down on the 11th floor, Vil and Wignall are making their way through the dungeon, and Wignall is extremely panicked, so he keeps spamming search to make sure there are no monsters nearby, but Vil tells him he should stop doing it so often since it will eventually burn through all his magic. Wignall says he has to be on high alert in case they get ambushed by monsters, but Vil tells him he doesn't have to worry about that since he has it covered. Vil's senses are able to detect any monsters within a 70-meter radius, while Wignall's search can go to about 200 meters, so it is still necessary for him to use search to look for distant monsters, but Vil has the tight spaces covered. Everything Vil said was perfectly logical, but Wignall doesn't understand how Vil can be so relaxed when they are stranded in this terrifying place. Vil explains that he has spent most of his time in the dungeon in order to make up for his lack of credits, so he knows all about the monsters that can be found here, and this isn't his first time getting stranded either, so he has a lot more experience with this than Wignall does. Just then, Vil is alerted to the presence of some monsters, and they are completely surrounded, so Vil tells Wignall to handle one behind them while he kills the 2 in the front. Wignall casts a wind spell and successfully knocks one of the orcs off its feet, but then he turns back and sees Vil effortlessly slicing the orcs apart, and even though he knows Vil isn't weak, he still can't believe how well he is doing against a threat like this. The orc Wignall was fighting gets back up, and he doesn't have enough time to cast a counterspell, so Wignall intends to use illusion magic to distract it. However, to his horror, it doesn't work, and he begins screaming at the top of his lungs because he's about to die. Luckily, Vil is able to step in and slash the orc in half, but Wignall is already having a mental breakdown. Vil explains that the orcs here don't have eyes, so illusion magic doesn't work on them, and that the only reason Wignall's spell wasn't effective, so he shouldn't let it get him down because he's a talented elf. However, Wignall admits that he's not talented in any way. In fact, among the elves, he's even more of a failure than Vil. This was the end of episode 9. Subscribe to not miss the next part.